So, what's it really like to be part of a religious minority in Iraq right now? We're about to break down the incredibly complex reality these ancient communities are facing, and we're going to use a brand new UK government report from September 2024 as our guide. We'll look at the dangers, the systems that can make life almost impossible, and a final, pretty surprising conclusion from the report itself. Okay, let's just dive right in. This first chart, it paints a really stark picture. 97% of Iraq's population is Muslim. That tiny little 3% sliver, well, that's everyone else. We're talking Christians, Yazidis, Sabaean Mandaeans, communities whose roots in this land go back literally thousands of years. This really sets the stage for the world they have to navigate every single day. So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at who these diverse faiths actually are. Then, we're going to narrow in on the different kinds of threats they face, including a really tough issue I'm calling the paper wall problem. From there, we'll zoom back out to ask if safety is even possible, before getting to the UK's final official assessment.
Right, first up, who are we actually talking about here? Let's put some names and faces to that 3% we just saw.
You've got Christian communities, mostly up in the Nineveh Governorate and the Kurdistan region. Yazidis are in pretty similar areas. Then you have the Sabaean Mandaeans, who are mainly down south. And there are other groups too, like the Kakai and Zoroastrians, who have a big presence in the Kurdistan region. The key thing to remember is these aren't just names on a list. They are unique communities with deep, deep historical roots in these exact places. All right, now for the tough part. Let's get into the real core of the report. The threats these communities face day in and day out. And we're talking about a whole range of mistreatment coming from the state, from other powerful groups, and sometimes from society itself. So what does mistreatment actually mean on a day-to-day basis? Well, according to the report, it could be anything from getting harassed at a checkpoint to someone just illegally taking over your house. It could be extortion or threats or this constant societal pressure, like women feeling they have to wear a hijab just to avoid trouble. And at the far end of that spectrum, you've got violence, detention, and even murder. Now, to really get what's going on, you have to understand this key term the report uses: hybrid actor. Think of it like this. The Popular Mobilization Forces, or PMF, are a perfect example. They are technically part of the Iraqi state, but they also operate with a ton of independence and don't always answer to the central government. And that creates a super complicated and often really dangerous situation for minorities. And believe me, this isn't just a theoretical problem. The report gets specific. It links these PMF militias to some pretty severe abuses. We're talking about trying to change the demographics of whole areas, seizing Christian-owned property, blocking people's freedom of movement, kidnapping for ransom. The report even mentions them operating secret prisons. But it's so important to know that Iraq is not all one and the same. You really have to think of it as a tale of two regions. The report says life for minorities is generally better in the semi-autonomous Kurdistan region, the KRI. More religions are officially recognized there. And just look at the language used for state protection. In federal Iraq, it's called unlikely, but in the KRI, it may be available. That's a huge difference. Okay, now let's focus on a very specific, systemic problem. This is something I'm calling the paper wall problem, where the biggest threat you face isn't a weapon, it's a piece of paper, a government form. Here's how this bureaucratic nightmare works. To get a national ID card in Iraq, you have to state your religion. Simple enough, right? But wait, the application form only has a list of federally recognized religions. So if you're Baha'i, or Zoroastrian, or Kakai, your faith just isn't there. You literally can't pick it. This forces you to either lie about who you are, or you get no ID card. And no ID means no access to pretty much anything. No school, no healthcare. You're basically a ghost in your own country. And this paper wall gets even thicker, even more impossible, if someone converts from Islam. The law just doesn't provide for that. So if a parent converts, their kids have to be registered as Muslim to get any official papers. It's a system that traps not just the individual, but the next generation too. So when you're caught in this web of threats, from militias on the one hand and bureaucracy on the other, the big question is, what can you do? Can you find safety anywhere? Let's see what the report says. It's the most basic question, right? If you're in danger, if you're being threatened, can you go to the police or the government for help? Well, the report doesn't mince words here. The answer is blunt. If the threat is coming from the state itself or from those powerful hybrid actors, like the PMF, protection is unlikely. And even if the danger is from someone else, like a criminal gang in federal Iraq, getting effective help from the state is still considered unlikely.
That leaves people with very few places to turn.
Okay, so if the state can't protect you where you are, what about just leaving? Can you pack up your family and move to a safer part of the country? Is that a real option?
Well, it's not that simple. The report says moving might be possible, but it's a huge maybe. It makes it really clear that it's far from a simple fix. It all depends on your personal situation. Do you have money? Do you have family somewhere else? Can you find work? It is definitely not a guaranteed path to safety.
And this all leads us to the final part of our breakdown. And honestly, it's the most consequential. After all this, what does it all add up to? What is the UK's ultimate assessment when it comes time to decide on asylum claims? Okay, get ready for this, because this is the single most important sentence in the entire report. After detailing all of that discrimination and violence, the UK Home Office concludes that, in general, the treatment does not meet the very high legal bar for what's called persecution or serious harm. Let that sink in.
And here's why that conclusion is such a huge deal. It flips everything on its head. It means the entire burden of proof, 100% of it, lands squarely on the shoulders of the person trying to find safety. The default assumption is that their situation isn't persecution. It's up to them to prove that it is.
And that's the final takeaway. It's not enough to just say, I'm a member of a group that's in danger. An asylum seeker has to show, with the specific facts of their own life story, how what happened to them in their town puts them at real risk of persecution or serious harm.
And so that's the profound question we're left with. When communities are facing systemic discrimination, but the legal bar for persecution is set so incredibly high that the entire burden falls on the individual to prove their personal danger, what does the future really hold for these ancient communities in the very land they've called home for thousands of years?